will win. And folks, elections have consequences. And we must beat Terry McAuliffe in November. And I was recently recognized as the only candidate who could do that. Friends, when I get to go work for all of you as your governor, we're going to open up this economy and get moving. We're going to protect our constitutional rights. We're going to get our schools open and introduce school choice. Friends, we're absolutely going to stand up for those that stand up for us, our law enforcement heroes. And we're going to press forward with election integrity. And that's going to include showing up to vote with a photo ID. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Glenn Youngkin, and I am running hard to earn your vote. Elections have consequences, and the consequences for Virginians over the last 8 years have been crushing. As you go to the ballot on May 8th, and I know many of you have yet to make your decision, I ask you to prayerfully consider selecting the candidate that can and will win in November. Thank you very much.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Virginia State Senator Amanda Chase. I'm a second-term state senator. And what I'm here to tell you today is that voting records matter. I'm the only candidate running this year that has a conservative 100% rating, whether we're talking about the life issue, whether we're talking about the Second Amendment, whether we're talking about business. On all these issues, it's hard to get higher than 100%. So I'm a voting record that you can count on. But let me tell you something. You should believe Terry McAuliffe whenever he says that I'm the front runner in this race. And I don't know if you got the email right before we got here that I did, but he is calling me the front runner of this race. 3 of 3 polls have confirmed that. I am the first female to ever seek the Republican nomination for governor. And friends, I believe that's going to be a big advantage for us this year as we seek to win back independents and Democrats and people who have left our party. We are going to bring them back, and together we will make Virginia great again. Thank you.
Well, I'm Kirk Cox, and I think the key question is, who can you trust to actually get the job done? Who on day one actually has experience? And I'm the only one I would tell you that has that leadership experience. I was blessed to be both the majority leader and the speaker. You have to be elected by your peers to do that. I was the one as speaker that killed the Kathy Tron bill that made abortion up into a birth legal. I was the one that fought Terry McAuliffe on the floor on 2A. And so that man in the arena is what you need to be Terry McAuliffe. And let me say this, I come from the bluest Republican district in the state. It's 46% Republican, 30% minority. When I had Michael Bloomberg, Planned Parenthood, Tom Steyer put up $1.5 million against me, I won that race by 4 points. Proving conservative leadership that can win. Thank y'all very much.
Republicans, Virginia Federation of Republican Women, it is an honor to be here with you tonight. And I want to thank all of my fellow Republican gubernatorial candidates who have come to this debate and continue to come to these debates. I respect every one of you for doing so. You know, it was when Daniel Gay hosted with his New Mission PAC a forum many weeks ago. It seems like 8 years ago at this point, Daniel. I said, I think it's time that we Republican candidates, we have a debate. We have been having that debate, and I've seen every one of you on those forums. Tonight, I want you to listen very closely to what you hear. I want you to keep asking yourself this question. Who here, among all these very fine candidates, has a vision, a winning vision for how we're going to lead as Republicans, as conservatives? I believe I have that vision, but I think we need to get specific. I think we need to get off the slogans and start saying specifically what it is we need to do. Tonight, part of my vision, Virginia should be the best. We are going to phase out the state income tax and go to 0%. I'm going to talk about that, but keep remembering who has a vision.
Good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Sergio La Peña, and with your permission, with your vote, I'll be your next governor. The question we need to be asking is, who can win in a general election? We keep putting the same type of candidate forward, and we keep losing. We've not kept track of the demographics of this Commonwealth. Virginia is now 20% Hispanic and 17% Asian. Those are immigrant communities that we have not reached out to. I can reach out to those communities because I am that immigrant. I can reach out to the military communities because I am a soldier. So I ask for your support, and I ask for your vote. I ask to be your next governor. Thank you very much.
Good evening. I want to thank the Virginia Federation of Republican Women for putting on this event. You are great women. And I am Octavia Johnson, former sheriff of Roanoke City. And this great state was built on life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And if we are not careful, and if we all don't go and do what we're supposed to do and vote in unity on November the 2nd, this foundation is eroding. So we need to put a stop to it. So we need to elect a governor that will fight the battles that need to be fought, that will take the punches that the Democrats will throw at them. I know how to take punches. So I ask for your support. Thank you.
Beginning round one, question one on election integrity. This was submitted by the Republican Women of Greater Richmond. Please explain in detail your plan to ensure we have election integrity in Virginia. And in particular, if Dominion voting systems and machines are used on November 3rd, 2021, will you immediately pursue an independent audit of the results when you are sworn in as governor? They have 1 minute each.
That's an excellent question. The first thing that we have to do, though, is we have to get as many of you mobilized so that we can have a fair election, so that we can even get there. And that's going to require many of you to become election officials. We've got to have you there because we need you at every place, because we've gone from a voting day to a voting season. In answer to the question, yes, we will make sure that this is going to be a fair election once we've gotten in. And then from then on, we've got to make sure there's audits and that we have the commissions put in place to be able to ensure that we go back to something that resembles what we had back in 2016 when you could verify identification, when you made sure that the counts were properly conducted and that they were auditable. We've got to restore voter integrity. I've been in Minnesota. I saw a challenge that you destroy voter integrity, and we're heading in the same direction. That's the way social take over. They start with the electoral process, and then they start with the indoctrination of schools, and then they go on to everything else, and you've seen where that's happening. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the most important issue we're going to talk about right now. This is the first topic we raised in our candidacy. Our election integrity task force was launched week 1. This is not a Republican issue. It's not a Democrat issue. And remember, Hillary Clinton complained like crazy. They stole the election from her. Folks, this is a democracy issue. And we launched right out of the box 5 steps to restore our trust in our election process. Number one, our Department of Elections will be made independent and transparent. Number 2, the voter rolls will be updated every 30 days, and if you've sadly died or moved away, guess what? You're not allowed to vote. You'll actually have to show up for every election with a Commonwealth of Virginia issued photo ID. This is not controversial. You need one to get a library card in Virginia. If you need a mail-in ballot, you'll fill out your application and prove you're a citizen, and will be 2 signatures when you send it back in. And finally, those voting machines will indeed be tested before and audited within 30 days, and it will be made public so everybody will know that this election was fair. Thank you very much.
Okay, so Republicans, Peter Duran, you're getting to know all of us here, but I think this is one of the examples where we get excited. We get excited because we look at the bench of Republicans, and among all the things we could possibly disagree on, this is one issue that unites every single one of the gubernatorial candidates. Because every one of us, yeah, we intend to be your nominee, every one of us is looking forward to our November election, and every one of us wants to know what you want to know. that on the night of the election, we can all go to bed that night and wake up the next morning and know promptly who won, and have confidence that whoever is the winner, that winner reflects the will of Virginia's voters. My plan is to do what Florida has done. Yeah,
Glenn?
absolutely. We're going to make sure that we have a voter ID for everyone. We talk about voter integrity. Washington Post says, what does Peter Graham mean by that, voter integrity? And I said, well, I want to make sure that everyone who votes is a living, breathing human being, and they have a right to cast a legal ballot. We're going to follow Florida's plan and how they cleaned up their election system. We're going to be the best in this country when it comes to voter and election integrity.
I've been asked to remind you, and I'm sorry, I don't get paid nearly as much as Chris Wallace, but here we go. I have been asked to remind you that we are holding our applause after each statement, no matter how enthused you are. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, I think Peter brings up a really good point. I was actually in Florida this weekend, meeting with General Flynn, who has endorsed my campaign for governor, and meeting with top election officials in the good state of Florida. You're right, they have done a great job exposing the voting fraud that has occurred in Florida. And what about Virginia? Listen, friends, I've been very vocal about election fraud. I was actually censured over it in the Virginia Senate when I said that the 2020 presidential election was stolen. And then I had the audacity to go to the January 6th Stop the Steal rally to support our president. The Democrats on the floor of the Senate wanted me to apologize. And they would take away the censure. I said, no, I'll go back to my seat now. You go ahead. I'll be the second state senator in Virginia's history to receive a censure because I stood up for our political free speech rights and to contest these election results. But going back to the question of Dominion voting systems, I think we should put them in a bonfire and burn them.
Please.
It's not your place, Larry.
Yes, we know that there is voter fraud. In Roundup, 2 people were just convicted of voter fraud. So yes, integrity we must pursue. And as governor, I will work that we have voter ID. And also, the voter rolls would be audited, changed over monthly. I know some people that are already, that lived in Grayson County, moved to Roanoke, and they were still on their voter roll, and that was in 1989, and they had lived in Roanoke for several years. So we will have audits, and also look at the personnel that is working in the voter registration. Thank you.
Our next question, candidates, is line number 3 on your order of speaking. Oh. I am so sorry, Mr. Cox. I apologize. I'm just, wanting to get right to traffic and weather. Gotta move the show along.
So let me start with this. Certainly the voting machine should be audited and tested. Let me tell you what the Democrats are. I put a bill on this year that would say that the state board of elections should be 3 Republicans and 3 Democrats. And the governor should not pick the commissioner, but the board should. Guess what they did at 7 o'clock in the morning? They killed that bill in 5 minutes. So I can assure you they're not interested in any of that whatsoever. And so sure, I was around when they actually put voter ID in. And don't forget, we've got other issues too. They put that bill in this year in the budget, $10 million for drop boxes, etc. So think of what they're doing budgetarily with that. And I'm going to sort of end with this. We're going to be a little bit creative, folks. We are where we are. Kirk Cox won absentee ballots in our last election 2-1. You're going to have to go after that type of vote if you're going to win. And so we both need to really talk about voter integrity. We better aggressively go after the way the system works at absentee vote if you're going to actually win this election.
Our next question is line number 3 on your order of speaking, candidates. And this comes to us from the George Mason Republican Women. James Madison, another Republican, wrote the Bill of Rights. Last time I checked, Virginians kind of give a heck about their Constitution. And as Mr. Youngkin said, yes, elections have consequences, and we saw that out of Richmond after this last election. Now the Democrats are in charge. This April, Governor Northam signed 5 bills into law imposing a variety of restrictions on the possession of and transactions involving firearms, including a red flag law. As governor, what gun legislation would you support that would simultaneously protect the safety as well as the constitutional rights of all Virginians?
The Constitution says we have the right to bear arms. So as governor, that's what I will be doing, is that we have every right to bear arms. So all laws that are put into effect would be for us to protect and bear arms for ourselves. And I would seek to repel any of the laws that have been put in place, especially the red flag law. I mean, we have every right to have a gun in our homes, and who is it to call or report you that you have guns because of your, you might have an attitude or whatever, they call and report you, and then they come and seek to have your guns removed.
As a government teacher, I actually have the privilege of teaching the Second Amendment. And really, all the amendments hang on that. If you think about it, that is the amendment that stops tyranny. The founding fathers understood that. Every socialist regime from Castro on will do that. So I think you'll see all of us up here talk about it. We're not for red flag. We're obviously not for local option, etc. We'll all try to reverse that. And that's going to be very important. But I'll tell you once again, who's actually fought that fight as a majority leader. I was the chief debater on the floor. When Terry McAuliffe basically put those same bills in and we killed them, was the one that actually fought those bills tooth and nail, actually the debater on the floor. And I think that really means something. So who's been in the arena, who doesn't talk 2A? So to me, I've really been that person. And so that is something we do have to fight for, because whether it be the First Amendment or any of the amendments, they hang on them. So you will see Kirk Cox take that constitutional right and make it one of my priorities in the Cox administration.
Friends, I'm a gun owner. I'm a lifetime member of the NRA. And I understand exactly what it means for the people to have the right to keep and bear arms. The challenge we have right now is that we can talk about all the things that we want to do, and as governor, I'll have a pen. And I will be able to veto bills. But for us to push back, we must, in fact, take back our House of Delegates to the point where we can initiate legislation. And that's why we started Virginia Wins. Because the Republican Party, sadly, has not been able to push back against the flood of money coming into this state from George Soros and from others. And so we started Virginia Wins in order to support sheriff races, school board races, city council races, Commonwealth's attorney races, city council races, and oh, by the way, delegate races. And we are supporting dozens and dozens and dozens of these races across Virginia so that it will not be a lonely victory for me in November. But in fact, we will bring a whole crop of Republicans in, and we will take back our House of Delegates and be able to initiate legislation to push back on the encroachment of our Second Amendment. Thank you.
So the Second Amendment obviously is extremely important. As governor, I will do my best to ensure that we comply with what the Constitution says. It's not something that the states or the counties can arbitrarily decide that they're going to enforce. There's a reason why it is in the Bill of Rights. So all of these counties that have decided to create these gun-free zones are doing it in an unconstitutional manner. We need to start challenging those counties or those entities that feel that they have the right that is really a constitutional one that is at a higher level. So we need to get that back. I have an AQ rating. I didn't know what that was until just recently. I love guns. When I was in Minnesota, I used to go shoot them up all the time. There was a warehouse where they used to have a lot of guns when I was there. After Chavez came in, that place got full. Guess why? Because he wanted to take guns away from the citizens. We know how that ended. Thank you.
Larry, I want to thank you for your question, because I think it reveals something very important, particularly on the Second Amendment issue. You see, none of us are running to become a super legislator. None of us are running for the House of Delegates. We're running for governor. If you're going to be governor, you have to have a vision. You have to lead our Commonwealth. That's why I keep saying, my vision is that Virginia should be the best, and I mean it. We are going to be the best state in the country when it comes to defending your Second Amendment rights. But here's what we're going to do. Because as governor, I am going to make all of Virginia a constitutional commonwealth. That means that if Nancy Pelosi or Joe Biden pass an executive order or a law that violates your constitutional rights, your Second Amendment rights, we're going to say no. And we will not enforce those laws here. And Joe, if you got a problem with that, we'll see you in court. And we will win. Because that's the governor's job, to set out a vision and protect your rights. And for too long, we've had supine governors who've been lying around on the job and not defending your rights. We're going to be a constitutional commonwealth.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is probably my top issue having been in the state senate. And I've been called Senator Annie Oakley, and I wear that like a badge of honor. I've been known to carry openly in the Capitol because of threats against my life. That's when I started open hearing in the Capitol. It's very serious. I have 100% rating with BCBL, A rating with NRA. Yes, I carry. I was also asked to be one of 2 legislators to speak at the annual BCBL rally where over 80,000 people showed up in support of the Second Amendment. But the question is this: what gun control legislation would you support? And the answer is none. Absolutely none. I would actually do what Terry McAuliffe did with Executive Order 50, the opposite. I would get rid of it. I'd use executive orders. I'd probably set a Guinness Book of World Records for the number of executive orders that I would file to take us back to the Constitution. Otherwise, it's going to take 4 years. Because remember, we've lost the House and the Senate, right? So we will have to use executive orders to take us back to the Constitution, and I'm willing to do that.
On to question number 3 on the topic of education. This was submitted again by the Republican Women of Greater Richmond. Do you believe our children are being indoctrinated to see America and many of our citizens as fundamentally flawed and racist? And if so, what is your plan to remove toxic curriculum from schools and ensure that patriotism and love for our fellow citizens is cultivated and embraced?
I've actually gone on the record to say that I will have a hotline, an actual call center that actually goes to my office, and we will start defunding liberal colleges, universities, public schools. We will allow the money to follow the child, and we will take away the funding for these schools that continue to teach critical race theory, which we should abolish. I love what Governor DeSantis did in his state, completely banning the Project 1619. I'm a former homeschool mom. We educated all 4 of our kids. We've done private school, homeschool, public school, and I believe the money should follow the child. There should be greater competition, and I believe the parents with their children should determine the type of education that our kids have, and I think that's good for our kids. We should stop trying. I have 4 kids, and we should stop trying to take square pegs and putting them in round holes. It just does not work. And as a mother of 4, 3 boys, that's where my wrinkles came from, was homeschooling with 3 boys. Trust me, we need lots of school choice.
I have 2 nieces that are near and dear to my heart. During my retirement, I have been taking care of them, and they are 3 and 5 years old.
Oh my.
And when Sarah had to go to school, to preschool, I told her mother that we need to find a school where she'll be safe and secure and that morally supports our values. Racism is in the heart. And the Democrats have been keeping us stuck in race for the past 4 years. So anything that I can do that will not be a part of our curriculum. I will seek the Board of Education and do what we need to do to make sure that our children are getting the best education.
Education is near and dear to my heart. My biggest proponent for education is my wife, who's homeschooled our children for 18 years. And one of the benefits you get out of that is you can use it for surrogates. So right now I've got my kids out and about So I'm a firm believer in child labor. I'm sure some of you have seen them, but it really works very well. Education is something that's really important to everybody because it's about compatibility. We've locked up our children the last year, and we've become less competitive. And how are we going to face up against the CCP, who is really behind a lot of this? The Chinese Communist Party is the master at indoctrination. Indoctrination is what's being done to our schools. What they fail to realize is that critical race theory is based on Marxism. And Marxism did a job in the last century. 20 million dead by Mao, 60 million dead by Mao, 20 million dead by Lenin and Stalin, and another 1.5 of Pol Pot. We can't have that. Let's go back to regular education.
Thank you. I believe that we are all created in the image of God, and therefore we were all equal. Anything that tries to divide us is not of Him. Critical race theory in our school is actually a political agenda, not an academic curriculum. And therefore, as governor, I will stand up and say we will not have that in our schools. We'll replace it with something I like very much, which is the 1776 Project. Our schools will be open. We will have a conservative state superintendent of schools. We will actually replace the entire school board of education. And we will, in fact, teach accelerated math. We will offer advanced diplomas. And we will make sure that Virginia's children can run in the fast lane, not in the broken down lane, which is where the McAuliffe administration wants to keep our children. They want them to, in fact, be left behind, not just by the world, but by the rest of the country. And as governor, I will not stand for that. Our children will know that this governor is going to stand for education and American excellence. Thank you.
Boy, this is a heartfelt subject for me. I spent 30 years doing this, and I was a government teacher who demanded my students know about American exceptionalism. When you think about our founding, when you think about the consent of the government, those timeless principles, that this country is going to work, we have to have a commonality. And kids will tell you they're not divided. If you go into a classroom right now, kids get it. What critical race theory tries to do is says America's a fundamentally bad country. And we basically want you to know that. And inculcated everywhere. Teacher training. I mean, you see right now where basically they're, and I sort of wrote, I was trying to remember this, I wrote this down. Here's one of their suggestions. To basically have culturally inclusive and equity practices, this is their thing, disrupt unintentional and intentional racism. So here you are as a teacher wanting to really teach with passion about government. So you get observed. Guess what you get observed on? So in the back of your mind, the entire time you're thinking about it. Okay, this is what I'm judged on. This has got to stop. We need to replace the Board of Education. We need to make sure that we have a curriculum that's solid. And certainly I'm the one I think that knows how to do that.
Okay, Kurt, I want to thank you because you lay it out. What is truly the problem with critical race theory? It's toxic. It's immoral to teach kids this, and it doesn't teach them how to read. But Republicans, this is an important point. One person on this dais here is going to have to debate Terry McAuliffe or whatever kind of Democrat emerges from their primary. And this summer, at that debate, we need a Republican who has a vision that can push back against Terry McAuliffe. Because bad news here, Terry McAuliffe, he's got a vision. Oh, it's a bad vision, but he's being specific in what he wants to do. Terry McAuliffe has said that he's going to put teachers' unions in charge of our educational system. We're going to say no. We are going to break the monopoly that teachers unions have by funding students instead of systems. It's going to change the game of education. Terry McAuliffe has said he wants to put those charlatans, critical race theory charlatans, in charge of our curriculum. We are going to say, no, Terry, we are going to get critical race theory out of our classroom. We're going to make sure that we have the best educational system in the country because we have a winning vision. Think about the debate this summer and who can go toe-to-toe with Terry.
Our next question is regarding transportation. And I've been interviewing candidates in Virginia for nearly a decade now, and when I ask them what's the most important issue to voters, it's always some form of transportation answer. This is a big deal. Joe Biden just crammed through a multi-trillion-dollar infrastructure bill, which didn't have a whole lot to do with what we would call infrastructure. It was a kitchen sink spending bill. In fact, I do believe kitchen sinks are included. If you would like a new kitchen sink, call Joe. He'll get you a new one. There's a grant for that. They just passed it. Candidates, how do you define infrastructure? First of all, that's the easy part of the question. And secondly, what do you believe are the most critical infrastructure priorities in Virginia and as governor? How do you solve those problems that have been causing higher tolls or taxes? We begin with Mr. Cox.
This is going to be a great issue for Republicans. Terry McAuliffe is extremely vulnerable on that issue. Remember, he is the one that exclusively put those tolls inside the Beltway in 66 with no new capacity. Probably nothing makes people madder than that. And so that's the issue we have to go after more. So what's infrastructure? It's simply roads, bridges, rail, and it is actually roads, bridges, rail. It's not bike trails, it's not ancillary things. We need systems, and we talked a little bit about smart scale. One thing we did very well in Virginia is we could do better. Is we basically started judging roads on building them as they're actually congestion. And actually, when you're in Southwest Virginia, it doesn't help with economic development. We need very tough metrics. We audited VDOT probably about 10 years ago, found about $1 billion worth of waste. That has to be done again. I just talked to a road and bridge contractor who has a current contract, he told me, it's taking 3 months to get VDOT to even call them back to actually repair roads and bridges. So we see this administration doing nothing in that area. And so this is a very crucial question. We can beat McAuliffe and we can challenge him directly.
Thank you, Larry. Okay, so we got a problem in Northern Virginia. The problem is that we could build I-66 out 20 lanes in either direction, and we would still have gridlock traffic on most afternoons. The problem is job lock. The problem is that too many people have to live close to their jobs. We're going to change that. But more importantly, Larry, it was on WTOP where Terry McAuliffe said that anyone who argued that tolls would ever go north of $17 for a one-way ride was a liar. So what we're going to do is we're going to pass the Terry McAuliffe rule that says no toll in Virginia can ever be more than $17. And that way, we're going to make Terry tell the truth. But more importantly than that, I'd say hyperloop is infrastructure. When I talk about Virginia being the best state in the country, I mean it. When I talk about big ideas, we are going to build out Elon Musk's vision for high-speed rail transportation that's going to make a commute from Front Royal to Arlington 7 minutes. We can get from Roanoke to Washington, D.C. in about 45 minutes. That's a game changer for our Commonwealth. Big ideas that Terry can't match.
That's why he goes on TOP instead of MAL. We'd love to come on. We would love to. I'm sorry, I messed everything up in this case.
So listen, friends, I have actually sat on Senate Transportation Committee for 4 years and really had quite the education around transportation. And specifically, the question is, how do you define infrastructure? So yes, I agree, that's roads, that's bridges, which by the way, many of our bridges are so collapsed and dilapidated that you can even drive fire trucks over many of our bridges. And that's a huge concern. I think it should be a top issue that we address as Republicans. And I think there needs to be a lockbox on those funds so that it's not rated. You know, we've got the toll money, supposedly supposed to go to transportation, but as you know, that it is not. I also mentioned that I support Smart Scale. It was implemented in 2015, and it is definitive metrics. It's not objective. It's very defined metrics. Allows the localities to compete for resources which are limited with VDOT, and it's very subjective.
Merciful God. Guess Terry heard us. Bless him.
Ms. Johnson, I'm so sorry. It's a cyber attack from Ralph Northam.
Roads and bridges. And on my way up, I saw where they are fixing roads here in Northern Virginia. Looks like y'all having the same problem we're having in Roanoke, Virginia. AB1. I mean, there's a wreck every And if his idea works, I looked it up on the, Googled it the other night when you were speaking about that type of travel. Man, it's fast. To be put in a tube and goes at quite a high speed. And, you know, I think sounds good. Maybe it can work for us, but we do have to come up with something that will work for Virginia, Virginia and here in Northern Virginia. Because as I travel, I notice that these are areas that really need consideration taken care of.
Well, friends, I've sat in traffic for a long time in Northern Virginia, but something has changed. What's changed is the fact that we're not going to go back to work the way we work. And what we've learned is that we can spread out and work. And when it comes to defining infrastructure, the one topic that we haven't talked about here is low-cost, rural, broadband internet. High speed. We must absolutely blanket Virginia with the ability for people who live all over this Commonwealth to in fact gain access so they too can participate fully. And oh, by the way, the kind of thinking that comes out of Richmond is to dig a trench and use 20-year-old technology. It's time to look up. Elon Musk has solved this for us with low orbit satellites. And guess what? We're spending millions of dollars digging trenches, and North Carolina is spending hundreds of thousands of dollars lighting up rural North Carolina. This allows people to, in fact, spread out. It allows us to, in fact, have businesses and people live all over the Commonwealth, as opposed to all jammed up in Northern Virginia. And friends, we must press forward with rural broadband access for all of Virginia's sake. Thank you.
Now, I'm going to start by a comment that you made about infrastructure a la President Biden. What is infrastructure? If we start putting bills and get padded with all sorts of pork and all sorts of unnecessary things that have nothing to do with infrastructure, we're not going to get there from here. So we've got to make sure that those bills are focused on actually building roads, bridges, etc. But more importantly, the first thing we got to do is open up the economy. If you don't open up the economy, you're not going to have the money to be able to do anything. And we've been intentionally keeping ourselves closed down and opening up schools. That goes along with the economy. And so what we've got to do is open everything up. I was out of the country for about 10 years, came back around 2002. And what I noticed was all of a sudden, I was in Georgia, and there were roads everywhere. And what was going on at the same time? The economy was growing. If you grow the economy, you have the money to be able to do that. But you've got to be able to set the regulations and make sure that it's budgeted correctly and it's managed even better. Thank you.
Question number 5.
Yes.
Security, rule of law. And this is a combined question from various slides. Last year, Virginia Democrats tried unsuccessfully to slash the Virginia State Police budget and reduce aid to local police departments. What will you do to protect police officers and limited immunity? Will you pledge to vote no on anything that defunds the police?
No, you veto. And that's an important distinction. Again, we're running for governor. We're not running for super delegate. And there's a distinction. You have to put out a vision. You have to rally all of Virginia around that vision. And when I say we're going to be the best state in the country, when I launched my campaign, I said we are going to be #1 in schools, in safety, and in jobs. Right now, Democrats are trying to decriminalize criminality. Democrats are saying, wave that magic wand and let them free. That's the parole board saying we should let criminals go free. So, as your governor, this is very simple. If you break the law, you'll face the law. And that applies to every member of our Commonwealth. We are going to support law enforcement. We are going to make sure we have the best trained, best paid law enforcement in the country who will respect your rights, and you'll know when you interact with a law enforcement officer, they're going to respect you. That's what it means to live in the safest and best state in the country. More importantly, though, law enforcement's gonna know they have our support. That's what they need to do their jobs.
I've been having conversations with law enforcement officials all throughout the Commonwealth. And one of the things that they keep telling me is that I'm ready to retire. They're ready to hang up. Look at the number of police officers that have left the force. Look across the board. And what's happening is that we have a governor who is favoring criminals and putting more restrictions on the police. That is that's the way that socialists operate, because they want to make sure that they keep you in check, and we cannot allow that. I've been all over the world. I've trained police forces throughout the world, and one of the things that we've always done wonderfully throughout the world is we emphasize the rule of law. As military officers, when we're training nationalized police, which we do by law, we always focus on making sure that rule of law is there. And you've got to professionalize, you've got to train, and you've got to make sure that people are taking care of their own citizens. But this is part of a ploy that this governor has used to intimidate people by giving more rights to criminals and a lot more restrictions to law enforcement officers. We gotta stop that. Thank you.
I will be well defunding the police. They put their life on the line every day that they put on their uniform and walk out their house. So what we need to do for them is give them the right training that they need. They now receive online training, a lot of online training. So they need to go back to in-person training, because with in-person, they need to talk and collaborate together, know what's going on in the different communities. But online, just keep doing the same thing over and over. So we will not be defunding the police. We will do everything that we can to support them.
And before the next